Bristol lad, born and bred. You can picture him, can't you? Navigating the familiar streets of his hometown, steep hills all around with that independent... Before the headlines, before the long years behind bars, there was just Clive. Clive Stephen Hartry, a Bristol lad, born and bred. You can picture him, can't you? Navigating the familiar streets of his hometown, steep hills all around with that independent Bristol spirit. He wasn't a figure of public note, not yet. He had family, friends, Bristol, maritime history, a slightly rebellious undercurrent, always looking out to the wider world. There wasn't a sign on his door. International smuggler in the making. He was a man who saw an opportunity, a path opened away from 9-to-5 life. It promised excitement, risk, and large financial reward. What makes someone take it? For Clive, the pull was strong. The first chapter, quiet before the storm. Clive Hartry's role wasn't that of a kingpin, sitting atop a vast empire. His position was more specific, more functional, and in many ways more crucial. He was the UK contact, the man on the ground. When a shipment of illicit goods needed to find its way into the United Kingdom, a massive quantity of cannabis, Clive was the go-to person. He was the vital link in a long and complex chain, the final piece of the puzzle that allowed the international operation to complete its delivery. This wasn't a small-time affair. We're talking about a sophisticated network. It spanned from producers in one country to distributors in another. His responsibilities were logistical, requiring a cool head and meticulous planning. Imagine the coordination: a vessel crossing international waters, carrying a cargo worth millions. It needs a safe place to land, a crew to unload it, a secure way to move the product onward, without attracting the attention of customs, the Coast Guard, or the police. This was Clive's domain. He was the fixer. Every operation, no matter how carefully planned, has a weak point, a vulnerability. For Clive Hartry and his associates, that vulnerability was the relentless gaze of law enforcement. A joint operation, codenamed Operation Trawler, had been quietly tracking the smugglers' every move. This wasn't a lucky break. It was the culmination of a painstaking intelligence-gathering effort, involving multiple agencies, likely spanning months. They knew about the vessel, the MV Hamal. They watched its slow journey towards the British Isles. The net had been cast long before the fish even knew they were swimming towards it. The final act played out off the coast of Cornwall. As the smugglers attempted their rendezvous at sea, transferring the massive cache of cannabis to a smaller boat, the authorities made their move. Flashing blue lights on the horizon, shouted commands over loudspeakers. The game was up. Seizing the 3.7 tons of cannabis, arresting the crew. The UK end of the operation had been decapitated before it could even get started. The prize was gone. For Clive Hartry, the knock on the door came soon after. Even though he wasn't on the boat, the investigation had traced the conspiracy back to him. As the UK contact, he was a key target. His arrest marked the end of his life in the shadows and the beginning of a new public ordeal. He was charged with conspiracy to import controlled drugs, a very serious offence. The evidence against him, compiled during Operation Trawler, was substantial. The case proceeded to trial at Bristol Crown Court, the very city where his story began. The familiar streets outside now led to a courthouse where his fate would be decided. The trial laid bare the details of the sophisticated smuggling plot. The prosecution presented its evidence, painting a picture of Clive as an integral cog in a multi-million-pound international criminal machine. In the face of this, a conviction was perhaps inevitable. The jury found him guilty, and then came the sentence. The moment the judge quantifies the price to be paid. For his role in the conspiracy, Clive Stephen Hartry was sentenced to 18 years in prison. 18 years, it's a number that's hard to comprehend. It's not just a punishment, it's a chasm of time, a vast expanse of life to be lived inside a system designed for deprivation. The judge's words must have echoed in the silence of the courtroom. 18 years. It's a sentence that lands with a physical weight. For Clive, this wasn't just a number, it was the rest of his youth, the entirety of his middle age handed over to the state. The judge's words must have echoed in the silence of the courtroom. 18 years. You can almost feel the air being sucked out of the room. For Clive, this wasn't just a number, it was the rest of his youth, the entirety of his middle age handed over to the state. The initial reaction is often one of shock, a profound sense of disbelief. Even when you know it's a possibility, the world outside the courtroom doors becomes a distant shore you can no longer reach. The world of Bristol, the world of family, the world of freedom. It's a brutal and abrupt separation from everything you've ever known in that moment and in the days that followed. A person faces a choice. You can be consumed by bitterness, or you can find another way. Clive's reaction was not one of explosive anger, nor theatrical despair. Instead, a kind of quiet, pragmatic acceptance began to take hold. He decided, in his own words, to get his head down and do the time. Prison is a world unto itself, its own rules, its own language, its own rhythms. For Clive, the transition from the free world to this closed society was abrupt and total. The first prison, let's call it Prison A, was his new home. Life here is stripped back to its bare essentials. The loss of freedom is the most obvious punishment, but it's the 1,000 tiny deprivations that grind you down. The loss of choice over what you eat when you sleep, who you speak to, the constant noise, the lack of privacy, the ever-present tension on the wings. Adapting is not optional, it is essential for survival. You learn the routines quickly. The daily grind becomes your entire world. The clang of a door unlocking in the morning, the walk to the workshop, the walk to the education block, the limited time for exercise in the yard. It's a monotonous, repetitive existence designed to break the spirit. Clive had to find a way to navigate this. He established a routine. A rigid personal schedule provides a sense of structure and control in an environment where you have almost none. Wake up, exercise in the cell, eat the prescribed meal, repeat. Each day ticked off is a small victory against the vastness of the sentence. Resilience in prison isn't about grand gestures of defiance. It's found in the small things, the daily habits, the quiet determination to maintain one's humanity. For Clive, keeping it moving became a mantra. It meant not stagnating, not allowing the crushing boredom and hopelessness to win. One of the most significant ways he did this was through education. The prison system offers opportunities for learning. Clive seized them. He wasn't just killing time, he was investing it. He reportedly pursued and earned a degree while incarcerated. Studying for a degree requires discipline, focus, a belief that your mind is still worth something, that you are still capable of growth. Beyond formal education, resilience was about maintaining physical and mental health. He stayed physically active, using yard time not to walk in circles but to push himself. This self-discipline is a quiet rebellion against institutional lethargy. He also found ways to contribute. By becoming a trusted figure, a listener, he could help others navigate prison pressures. These small acts of connection build a survivable community within the walls. They reinforce one's sense of purpose and humanity. A letter from home becomes the highlight of the month. A good book is a precious escape. These small acts of resilience, routine, study, quiet support, keep it moving. Clive Hartry's story is, on the surface, a cautionary tale about crime and punishment. It's a clear demonstration that involvement in high-level organized crime carries with it the very real risk of losing decades of your life. The glamour and excitement of the smuggler's life ended abruptly, replaced by the stark grey reality of a prison cell. The £11 million prize vanished, and in its place was an 18-year bill to be paid to society. The law in this case was not outsmarted. It was patient, it was methodical, it was absolute in its judgment. The first lesson is that the house almost always wins, but don't stop there. The more profound story is human. It's not just about crime, it's about consequence and how a human being copes with a consequence of that magnitude. Clive's journey inside prison is a study in adaptation and mental fortitude. Faced with an insurmountable stretch of time, he chose not to break, he chose to bend. He accepted his new reality without being defined by it. This distinction is everything. Even in an environment designed to strip away identity and hope, a person can retain a core of self, agency over mind and spirit. He was not just a criminal, he became a student, a graduate, a mentor, a survivor. His resilience, through education and self-discipline, was for himself, not the system. It ensured the man who walked out would be more than an older version of the man who walked in. Keep your head down and keep it moving.